Welcome back to the Slanted Attic Experience. Today, we're diving into an episode that covers everything from golf gear and construction blueprints to cutting-edge medical research and the business of healthcare. Because where else would you get that mix? Our guest this week is Mait Innes, a first-year medical student at Virginia Commonwealth University, who's as passionate about research and clinical inquiry as he is about a well-struck 7-iron. While still navigating his future in medicine, Mait is fully committed to learning, questioning, and experimenting to carve out his niche in the field. Outside of his studies, he stays active through golf, fishing, and various sports, striking that crucial balance between academia and real life. And while football season is officially over, much to the dismay of Minnesota Vikings fans everywhere, SKOL, but also condolences. At least warmer weather means more time on the golf course. We start with golf, breaking down Richmond area courses, a recent golf trip, the Dominion Energy Classic, and club selection strategies. From there, we shift gears into commercial construction, covering the contractor-architect relationship and project logistics, before jumping into medicine and research. Mait shares insights on cardiology studies, mentorship, and how to build opportunities in the field, plus a deep dive into physician burnout, the financial side of healthcare, and public medical education. The conversation wraps up with medical technology, robotic-assisted surgery, passion projects, human psychology, twin studies, and tribalism, because we never miss an opportunity to overanalyze the human experience. So whether you're here for the golf talk, the medical insights, or just some good conversation, let's get into it. All right, everybody, we're back with another episode, and today we're going to welcome a new guest to the show, somebody we've been trying to get on here a long time. I'd like to introduce Mait. So without further ado, why don't you tell the crowd a little bit about yourselves before we get started here?
Thank you, Tyler, for that introduction. Yeah, my name is Mait Innes. I'm currently in the VCU School of Medicine, graduated from UVA in 2020, born and raised in Richmond, Virginia, and just happy to be here talking with you.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you. So kind of before we hit the record button here, we're just chatting about golf. I recently got back from a golf trip with a couple of my buddies, and we were shooting the breeze about that. So golf, how long have you been golfing?
Probably like on and off for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Seriously, I'd probably say.
Yeah, it's a fun sport to grind at. I mean, I feel like once you're invested, you're very invested, but it does take a lot of time and money to do so, which kind of hindered my experience throughout college. I played in high school for our high school golf team, so
Oh yeah.
it's been a wild road up and down the the frequency I'm able to golf. I mean, in college, I played once a year, twice a year. If I was able to get out during summer break a few times, that was phenomenal. But the Blacksburg courses were actually fairly inexpensive. We just didn't go a whole lot. I think it's like $24 for 2 rounds of the 9-hole course, and then the Pete Dye course out near Radford, out near the river. That one was a little more expensive, so I never got to play that. That's one of kind of my bucket list things when I go back to Blacksburg in the next year or two for another Hokie game. That's something I want to kind of go up and spend an extra day and do. I've heard it's a beautiful course out there.
That'd be so awesome. What's that course called? The Pete Dye one?
It's the river course, I believe, the Pete Dye River
course.
That's
right.
Yeah, it's in Radford. What was the course? I played up in Charlottesville. I was there for one of Grace's really good friends' weddings. It was like almost like a resort venue. They had a little par 3 course as well as like a regular golf course. I can't remember.
Farmington?
Maybe that could have been it. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it's like definitely was Farmington. They have a little par 3 course in addition to like their 18-hole course, which is awesome.
Yeah, I thought that was maintained beautifully. I mean, it's kind of awesome when you get there and the course is just really well maintained, laid out. The staff is great. Like that's so much of the experience I had in Myrtle Beach that it's got to set up that way because that's like the huge attraction down there is all these gorgeous golf courses and all the businesses. And we were able to go through a booking agent for golf, like specifically for golf travel, like vacation.
Was it like Golf Myrtle or something?
It was Golf Zoo. For those of you out there that want to use my man Jamie, I'll shout him out, bro. Jamie hooked me up. Very phenomenal throughout the process. I think we probably could have saved a couple bucks if we were to were to have booked it by ourselves, but I mean, was it really worth a $50 per person to have to go through all that shit? I don't know. I mean, that's up to you, but
Probably not.
that's what I'm saying for coordinating 8 different guys' stuff and 3 rounds of golf. So thankful for that. But yeah, we got down there on Thursday night after a bunch of car issues, and then we played 4-man scramble on Friday. Both of our teams, we played apartment versus apartment on Friday, which was apartment A was my buddies Graham, Mitch, Xerxes, and Hunter, and then apartment B was me, Bruce, Coleman, and Coleman's buddy D Mills. And both of the groups shot 66s on Friday, so we did a little putt off back at the house after that to determine the winner. And then Saturday morning we played at Willbrook Plantation, which was gorgeous, man. That's got to be my favorite
Yeah.
course out of the 3. Hunter and I shot a 75 2-man scramble. I was very happy with that. And
Mm-hmm.
then we were on pace to shoot a 76 for the second round, which was at Tradition Golf Club. We pulled up. It's like got a big thing on the awning in the front. It's like, 4.5 stars, voted 2022 South Carolina or Myrtle Beach's best destination golf course or whatever.
Oh.
So that was neat. We were the first tee time to go off on Saturday morning, and at that course, the Willbrook Plantation, and the very last tee time to go off Saturday evening. But yeah, that's what I was going to say. Everything was catered directly to golf. It was super cool. Like all the villas, like all the amenities at the apartment complex were all golf related, all the stores, businesses. So it was super neat to kind of be enthralled by that and entertained by all that for 3 or 4 days. Haven't done that since, I played golf in high school. So it was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah. I'm glad that y'all were able to do that. It sounds like such a blast.
Yeah, I mean, the second week or third weekend in November, weather was perfect. I mean, 68
yeah?
degrees both days,
Nice.
sunny. Yeah, it's windy though. It made the course much harder to manage.
Okay. I feel like small price to pay.
Yeah, right, exactly. We weren't really bothered by the marshals. I mean, even the first guy on Friday was driving around watching us hit and stuff and talking shit. So that was kind of fun. You know what I mean? Like I'm used to
I'm
court
sure
martial.
that,
Yeah,
yeah,
guys
I'm
on
sure
gear
that Myrtle
pushing.
Beach has seen worse than y'all have to offer.
Yeah, we were hacking it up though. Give getting our money's worth. But I really think the 4-man scramble and 2-man scramble kind of helped move the round along. We were pretty varied in terms of like golf skill level, so it kind of allowed everybody to kind of play to their own strengths and kind of play where they're comfortable. So like, I was the low handicap. Mine's like an 8-1 or 8-2 right now. And so I played with my buddy who hadn't even played a full round of golf in 2024, so it was fun where we were able to find that medium, and everybody was competitive both days. You know what I mean? I was concerned about that, how varied these skill levels are, is it going to work out? So excited about that. But yeah, where do you kind of play in this area? I've played a few courses. Royal New Kent was probably my favorite outside of country clubs.
That's on my list. That's on my list. I've always wanted to play at Royal New Kent too because I just love links courses.
Mm-hmm.
But I play all over the place in Virginia. Love playing at the Highlands if you've ever played there.
I don't know that I
Hunting
have.
Hawk.
Yeah, I
Hunting
played
Hawk is
there
a pretty good
recently.
staple. Yeah,
That was
it's pretty
nice.
inexpensive, good shape. Play at Hanover a decent amount, which is like semi-private, but it's like really affordable and super great course. And then Veneterra, if you've ever played there, it's a pretty
No,
tough one.
yeah, we were in between that one and Royal New Kent when we were booking one out there. My buddy's out in Pocosin, so
Mhm.
that was kind of like halfway for both of us. So that's what we were kind of looking for, and then both of those courses were kind of in that range. And I was like, shit, man, I really want to play a link style course. This one looks awesome, and it just so happened that it was 99 degrees when we went and played. Brutal. They had no water on the back. They had no water jugs or anything or cart girl on the back 9 holes. And they didn't tell us that. So great experience. I shot a 39 on the back. I shot
Are
a
you serious?
50. Yeah, 51 on the front. Yeah.
Okay.
So very different experiences, but
They're like two
yeah.
different rounds.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was that long of a course. We played fast, and it took us 5.5 hours,
Yeah.
almost
Oh
6.
my god.
Dude,
Oh my
so
god. Yeah, I
long, so many traps.
still want to get out there.
Oh yeah, 100%. I would love to play it again. It was worth it was $100, but it was worth the money.
Okay, that's what I heard. It's kind of expensive.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing though. Like I'm willing to spend a little bit extra if I know the course is going to be primo
Hmm.
almost. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's like I don't love these public courses that get hacked up, every weekend by hundreds and hundreds of golfers, and their rate is still like $70. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I've never understood that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the green aeration or not,
Hmm.
not well kept, all that fun stuff. So, yeah, I went to, I think, what was it, the Dominion Energy Classic last year.
How did you go
Uh,
to that?
yeah, I was there. I was there Saturday, I believe, the Saturday round.
Was that when Noah Khan was performing?
Yeah, we saw
Did you
him
see him?
on Friday.
An extra added bonus. Is
Yeah,
that the reason why
exactly.
y'all went?
No, that had been the first golf tournament I really had a chance to go see outside of the Women's Open I missed in Lancaster near my hometown in like 2016, I think, when I graduated high school. But like that's the only other chance I really had to go see a golf tournament, and I was like,
Mhm.
it's not overly expensive, it's close, and I was like, I don't care. I grew up watching these old heads play. I played with them on Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004 on my PlayStation 2. Like I know all of these golfers. Like I
Oh,
want to go
dude, what a
watch
great
that.
game.
So yeah, oh yeah, man, those Tiger Woods games back in the day. Some of my
Is that like
favorites.
what got you into golf?
Um, I want to say that had to have had an influence. I mean, I remember my first club was this little blue Nike pitching wedge, and I used to just chip that all around the backyard. And I think from a younger age, my parents knew that I was going to want to play golf. But I took it relatively seriously. The only thing that was tough for me in high school is I was our number one golfer by like 10 strokes, but I would
Mhm.
lose. I would lose every match I played by 8 or 9. I mean, these kids were scratch golfers. I was shooting 80 to 84, on a
Mhm.
consistent basis. So, like, I think I would have had a little bit better experience if I were in a larger school and I was like the number 3 golfer. I had the 2 guys ahead of me shooting, 71 and a 78,
Yeah.
and then I'm competing for that. We didn't really have a huge golf program. Yeah, that would have been cool, but, hindsight's 2020. I get to play golf now. I got to go this past weekend with my boys and go hack up 3 unbelievable courses. So, just gifted to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Good way of looking at it.
Yeah, bro. Well, we'll have to go get out and play here in the next couple weeks before it gets too
Yeah, I would
cold.
love to. I'm not opposed
Yeah.
to playing in cold weather, to be honest with you. I've never been bothered by the cold, unless it's like 30, blowing, piercing cold. At that point, probably not. But anything above that, I'm game to go.
Yeah, man. It's just for me it depends on when the courses close. Actually, last year I'll show you. I've got it right behind me here. I broke my driver head last year in February. Or I guess this
Oh my
past year
god.
February. And PXG was nice enough to send me a brand new one.
Are
And I
you
put it
kidding?
yeah, right. I put it on this hazardous smoke shaft. Third swing on the range, cracked the shaft. So I haven't
Are
replaced
you
that.
serious?
I've been using my old driver from high school, but I need to
Oh, that
spend the money.
sucks.
Yeah, the problem is I want to go there and get fitted for a shaft because I haven't done that yet. I need shaft length and then like shaft weight and flex or whatever, and that
Uh,
costs money. And I haven't wanted to spend the $80 it costs to get fitted for the shaft, and you have to buy the shaft, which is another $175, and then you got to get the shaft installed, or you got to put a grip on it, and you got to lengthen it. All the $300 just to get a brand new shaft and measure for it on a
yeah,
driver.
back to what you said about financial hindrances. That is definitely when you get down the rabbit hole.
Right.
Big
Yeah,
asterisk
absolutely.
next to call.
Yeah, man. I've been playing with a what's a good word for it? Like a yard sale bag. I mean, I'm using my dad's old irons. Two of my wedges were purchased from the country club I belong to as demo clubs, and I'm still using those. One of them's from Facebook Marketplace. The other one I bought from like a used sports store. I think it was Play It Again Sports. And then my putter I got off my coworker, Scotty Cameron Newport Select 2.5. It's fucking sick.
Oh,
I
oh,
only paid him,
okay.
yeah,
You
I only
had
paid
me.
him
You
100
had me
bucks.
going there for first, but then you're like, "Oh, I have a Scotty Cameron putter that I
Yeah,
got from
well,
my coworker."
dude, he let me have it for 100 bucks. So hard to pass that up. I got it lengthened, put a new grip on it, all that fun stuff. And then I have,
So that's
yeah, yeah,
that's an awesome
sweet.
coworker.
Yeah, yeah, he hooked me up, man. And then yeah, I've got a Nike 5 wood that I got for Christmas, and then a 3 wood that I purchased in like 2013 for 70 bucks, and it's been balling ever since. So
You know, sounds like a pretty
yeah,
good bag.
yeah. I recently actually acquired some single length clubs from some guy on Facebook Marketplace for not that expensive, and I hit them for a while, but I couldn't love them.
Were they irons?
Yeah, they're irons, and then it has a 1, a 5, and a driver, a 5, and a 7 wood.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they're all the same length shaft.
Like some Bryson DeChambeau stuff right there.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of interesting because it all lines you line it all up in the center of your stance, and it's the same swing. You don't actually change
Yeah.
the swing for the club, which for new golfers that might be a lot easier. As you're getting into
Oh
the
yeah.
sport, so might be appealing for something like that. But I didn't really love them. I think it's because of the brand of club. I'm not really impressed with the quality of the club. Um, but who knows?
What
It's
is
hard
it?
to say. They're called what is it? The one irons.
Oh,
It's
interesting. I've never heard of
yeah,
them.
yeah. I think one iron golf. Yeah, here it is. Custom fitted golf clubs, which they also could be slightly short or something. I don't know. But
You are pretty tall.
yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm 6'3". Well, 6'2" and 3/4 if we want to get super technical
Just
about it.
go ahead and round that one up.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. But yeah, the clubs were fine. They were in great condition. So I think what I'm going to do instead is highlight the clubs in my bag. I think I need to upgrade and sell them and spend the money on those clubs.
Now's the time to do it in the off season.
That's right. Yeah, so I can spend some time warming up with them before we get going. They also have the TrackMan bays in a couple of places downtown, I believe, too. We could always go do that on like a Saturday for a couple hours. I think it's like 40 bucks an hour.
I think there's one place on Broad Street. Um,
Yeah.
it's like right across from the Estes headquarters. Pretty small. It's like tucked in like beneath an apartment complex. I'm forgetting the name of it. But all it is I think 2 bays that you just rent out, and then it like sends you a door code, and you just walk in there like an
Oh,
hour. I don't know what it's called.
I'm looking it up.
Let's see. I
There's a couple. Is
think it
it
might just be called, yeah,
indoor
indoor
golf?
golf, but not the one at Rockets Landing. The one in Scott's Edition. It's technically
Yeah.
in Scott's Edition, just outside of it.
Yeah, it's past what is it, 195 there. So it
Hmm.
looks like you have to have a membership,
Oh, what?
149 a
Wait,
month. 8
I don't think that's
hours,
worth it.
8 hours per month. Wait, you can buy a
Uh,
par 4 which is 125, which is 4 hours.
I don't know if
Winter
that's
impro-
worth it.
winter improvement package, $400 for 10 hours for winter practice and play. Valid for 6 months.
I thought it was like an unlimited thing, or you just pay for an every hour.
Yeah, this is saying 3-month minimum commitment for Scott's edition. Damn.
For
Yeah.
there's other places like that. Hey, good business opportunity.
That's right. I know they have one at the First Tee downtown. Um that's
Yeah, they do
where
have one.
that's where I've been before. But it's kind of like it's a fine facility. I don't know. I wasn't like impressed, but it was definitely like you pay for what you get
It's
type of
yeah, it's
experience.
super basic. And I was there. I was probably 2 years ago. They had like really competitive rates for range balls. And
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden, like the prices got jacked up by like 30%. Like I don't know if I can justify spending $20 for I forget what how many balls it was, like 75 or 100. I was like, I'll just mosey on down the road.
Yeah, I think it got bought out by somebody, which is why the price
Oh,
increased.
really?
I forget what exactly happened there, but
'Cause Belmont's owned by the same people, right?
so is the first tee in Chesterfield.
Oh yeah, the Tattersall one.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been out there. Do you?
I have not. I heard it's nice. It's just like it's a little far. If I want to drive anywhere, I just go to Belmont. It's 15 minutes, if that.
No, I mean, I'm just probably closer than that, right? Not that
Yeah,
far.
I mean it's 5 minutes from my office. I mean, so they have
Wait, where
great
you
like
work over there?
I work off of Forest Ave.
Oh, okay. Who do you work
Yeah,
for again?
I work for Commonwealth Construction Management.
Okay,
We're
yeah, I
a
know
general
exactly where that is.
contractor. Yeah, we do a lot of like dental offices, or pretty and medical office buildings are our kind of like large majority of our work. It's good money. There's a lot of you know large and small medical companies and
Hmm.
dentists trying to open practices around this area. So it's perfect for that kind of stuff.
Awesome, that's so specialized.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we do other stuff too. We're finishing up a restaurant right now. We just did a nice office building, stuff like that. But our bread and butter is really in those two areas. We have good relationships with like the medical and dental vendors, which are a
Hmm.
big part of that whole scenario. For those of you listening out there that want to learn how a commercial building is built, it depends on if the industry is specialized. There's a lot of not necessarily hoops you have to jump through, but just a lot of things you need to know. A lot of people that need to come in and give their opinion and kind of tell you or advise you how to do things in those areas.
I can't even imagine the amount of like consulting. Maybe consulting is not the right word, but like the know-how to open up something like that. Or even if somebody who's going to work there and knows exactly what they need, either doesn't know how to get it or doesn't know exactly what they need.
Right,
I've always thought
right.
that was super interesting.
Yeah, and like, that's where our expertise and that's what you kind of pay us for to manage the job, right? We have those relationships with those vendors that you say, "Hey, I want 6 dental chairs with 6 12 o'clocks, water, air, and vacuum in all of them. I need TVs in each of the patient rooms, one in the waiting room, yada, yada." They just tell us everything we want. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into that. We have
Hmm.
architects that design it, and we basically build off of those plans. They're the ones that carry a lot of that weight. The architects do. You find yourself a good architect, you're chilling. Good architect, good general contractor, you'll have a good time. Bad architect, good general contractor, okay time. Good architect, bad general contractor, okay time. You're not having a good time with either of those. So it's like it's really helpful when everybody meshes because it's a team oriented thing, man. Like we're trying to work together with you to complete this project on time, under budget, and to its fullest extent. Like we want to take pride in this work. So
Hmm.
it sucks when you don't get that sometimes. That
Have you
relationship
ever
with
had any horror stories with some general contractors
some
or
general
architects?
contractors or architects. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let's see. Ones that I can talk about. I'm trying to think of well, architect of Congress. I worked on the Capitol building, my internship, my senior year of college. We were working on the stone restoration for the right wing.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was just tough because everything was extremely vetted and had to be done with the utmost scrutiny. And everything was a process and paperwork and all that stuff. I've had some not so pleasant experiences in other areas of general contracting, just because, you know, um, for architects, sometimes designing gets in the way of practicality, and I think that's where it kind of gets a little hairy. When some design ideas might not be practical to build, and then that creates, it causes a riff in between the general
Hmm.
contractor and the architect because they want to carry out their idea and it might not be complete without this certain aspect. And the general contractor doesn't want to take liability from, building this new structure that they want to incorporate. It's just, it's a lot of not necessarily politics, but communication and hashing that kind of stuff out. But like, what does the client want? Does the client want all this crazy shit? If so, they designed it. Let's fucking do it. You know what I mean? Like it's important that we, follow the client's needs, but it does get a little hairy when you're dealing with other people that are trying to look out for their business, right? They're trying to promote themselves, and especially like smaller architects, they want to do a good job and make sure everything's right. And maybe that comes, at a disadvantage to us as a general contractor because we have to reinstall stuff twice or do things again, when new drawing sets are issued, and that causes us to lose time and money, as well as the owner. So yeah, it's a lot of politics and trying to figure out what's best for everybody type of deal.
I can only imagine how involved that becomes, how many hands are in that pie at
Oh
any
yeah,
given time.
everybody wants a slice of cake, bro. You know how it is.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah. Yeah. In any business, there's so many people that have so many different opinions, and kind of I found that it kind of clouds the end goal, where you're just probably like, oh, this is what the client wants, and then architect says differently, contractor can't do this, vendors say we don't have this, then it's like,
Right.
oh, then now actually the client could change their mind. Yeah, I can see how that can get really messy really quickly.
Sure. And if you invest overhead money into those things and then the client says no or it doesn't work, like who's on the hook for that? That's also where it gets hairy. How do you place the blame for monetary value? Nobody wants to be responsible for the bill. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah.
yeah, that gets kind of crazy. But let's transition to your studies a little bit here. I'm kind of interested because we were chatting before we got started here, and I was like, dude, I looked you up online. I couldn't really find the programs you were in at school and everything, and then that kind of got us caught into a rabbit hole for 20 minutes on my old YouTube videos. For those of you out there that have seen them, you know what I'm talking about.
Go check them out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. If you haven't, you're missing out. So, what kind of made you choose that career path? Like, what got you interested in medicine and health? Kind of give me the lowdown.
Yeah, so I mean, this is one of the introductory questions that everyone asks you when you decide you want to go to medical school, and
Yep.
you're always constantly thinking of this answer, and you're always constantly thinking of, oh, why am I doing this while you're in it? I've seemed to find like the question of why is really important. It's kind of was a journey like across like many years, I guess starting in high school, I would say, kind of transitioning into college. My grandfather was a cardiothoracic surgeon, so I kind of had experience in the healthcare setting. Well, not really experience, but I was exposed to it early on.
Right.
That was always kind of like a seed in my head where I was thinking, oh, this is something that could be really interesting to do. And then, like any good teenager in high school, you just don't really think about what you want to do, and doing sports, going
Yep.
to dances, doing
Yep.
quizzes, tests, doing some bullshit summer job so that you can get some money to go out. And then you get to college and you're like, oh, okay, kind of got to figure out what I want to do now. And I
Hmm.
think I enrolled in a biology course because I mean, I got to UVA and I really had no idea what I wanted to do, except I knew that my dad was a biology major. So I was like, all right, I'll start there. And
Elephant. Yep.
then, yeah, so I think like 90% of the kids in the class were pre-med. Like, all right, I guess this is kind of what I'm doing. And then just by virtue of the fact that you're in this field, you start to getting all these different exposures. And it just became like perfectly clear that I was definitely not cut out to do like business, finance, other fields that my friends were going into. And so I started investing a lot of time and money into pursuing the medical career. And
Sure.
it's like random one-off experiences where you go work in clinics or you're like doing EMT work. Just kind of solidifies that. We're just like, all right, I have to go all in on this because the process to get to medical school, I think, is almost arguably tougher than once you're in school. And especially that whole process got so messed up with COVID. because
Hmm.
when I graduated in 2020, all like the labs and the medical assisting jobs basically shut down momentarily. So everyone was kind of like in flux.
Yeah,
Um, and they still are dealing with issues like that. But
sure.
yeah, so graduated, wanted to go to school, COVID, ended up going to a graduate program in biomedical science, and then did research for 2 years at VCU, which is in Richmond in
Hmm.
cardiology, and then finally matriculated this past year. And that's kind of where I am now.
Nice, nice. My mom worked for a cardiology practice for
Oh, no way.
8 years. Yeah, yeah. She's a CRNP. She does travel nurse stuff right now. So she works
Oh,
for
that's great.
Op, the insurance giant, and she does basically elderly care, and travels to a bunch of different facilities to make sure patients under her healthcare plan or program are being administered what they need in those circumstances. But kind of a question I wanted to ask you at the beginning, when you're trying to develop that interest for a career path, where you said you were pretty heavily surrounded by medical students. I'm sure that had a large impact on your choice. How so? Like, were those people just more interesting to work and engaging in class programs and like group projects? Like, you just quickly found an affinity for medical knowledge and want to learn more. um, Tell me how that kind of affected you, because like for me at least, I was surrounded by a lot of people that are in the same line of work that I am now, and that pretty heavily influenced me at the time for sure.
Yeah. It's kind of hard not to just like be influenced a little bit when you're in a class of 400 like extremely bright people.
Yeah.
And at least in my case, I was closer to the bottom of the barrel. So everybody else it seemed so great to me. Um, so it just kept inspiring me to like doing all these classes and the people I like my immediate friend group that I surrounded myself, I would say it's probably like more like misery loves company, where you're
Hmm.
going through
Yeah.
something that's like so hard with a group of people and it's like they're gonna hold you accountable to the end. And it's like, okay, this is your goal, this is your dream. Like, let's just get through this together, then get to the other side. And a lot of
Yep.
those people who have like I grew up in school or in college with have now gone on and they're in medical school. And it's just kind of like you have that bond basically where it's like we did organic chemistry together and that really
Hmm.
sucked. That was really brutal. And then, but like that kind of carries you through it. And that's kind of how you're influenced by. In the same vein, it's like you see all these people do such incredible things, innovative wise, where if you're like in the research field or you're like working in a clinic, I mean, a lot of it is mundane and of like bureaucratic and doing paperwork, and then you get this like small glimpse into what other people think is like so cool about the medical field, and then it just reestablishes and like really drives you as a reminder like this is why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
But the people are a big part of it, especially like the professors and physicians you get to work with, because like they're so accomplished, and if you can see yourself in them, it makes it a little bit easier and inspiring.
Yeah, man. No, well said. I think a lot of what we do is greatly influenced by the quote unquote mentors that we have in our lives, whether that be your parents, your professors, a work colleague, stuff like that. So, really having those good people in those programs is really going to help you succeed and want to learn and grow further. What did you do research on when you were at VCU the past couple of years?
Yeah, so I was in cardiology research
Oh, that's
specifically,
right.
specifically electrophysiology. So basically,
Interesting.
like the way that your head and your heart send signals to one another, um, electrically. That's a terrible explanation of it, but um, so I did a lot of clinical trials working with pacemakers,
Hmm.
um, ablations, which is like how you fix certain arrhythmias when your heart's not beating correctly, blood thinner drug administration, and
Hmm.
then a bunch of like when you're working out, how does your heart function based on a procedure or not? And that was
Oh,
just so interesting to me.
yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one study in particular, we were basically, you would work out on this bike and
Mhm.
there would be like, you'd be hooked up to an EKG and an echo, which is basically like recording your heart rhythm, and the echo is like looking at your heart and how it's beating and how it's functioning. And they're like
Mhm.
doing all these measurements pre and post this procedure called an ablation. And I just thought that was so interesting. I didn't even get
Yeah.
to write any paper based on it, but I was just basically coordinating um, patient, physician, and then working with the institutional review board, inputting data. So I was doing a lot of the grunt work, but I could see, like, maybe not, this is not a great way of saying, but I could appreciate the innovation that it required to like put on these clinical trials.
Sure.
And so I think when I was doing that for 2 years and I was really assessing whether or not I wanted to go to medical school, I think that was like one of the things that really brought me over the edge, and the relationships I made with the physicians at VCU, I
Mhm.
think in large part is why I'm where I am today. So I credit a lot of that to research. And it's definitely something I would like to pursue in the future if I ever become an established physician in my own right.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of questions along that vein. So my younger sister, I've got two younger sisters, both of them are
Mhm.
currently at JMU. One of them is studying neuroscience and she's about to graduate. Well, she technically graduated already. I think she got the COVID year, extra year eligibility for NCAA for field hockey. So
Oh,
she stayed
nice.
an extra semester. They paid for her room and board. So I think she just did some gen eds for the time being, so she's kind of in that limbo period. She's not sure what she necessarily wants to do in the future. A couple of options, go play field hockey abroad, enroll in medical school, stuff like that. So, kind of my question here is like, how did you find your way into that research field? Post grad, like post undergrad, I guess, post grad undergrad. Was it connection based, or like that's kind of what you saw yourself doing? You weren't sure, so there's kind of some things you were trying out. How'd that
Yeah, I
go?
mean, I think it's a lot of luck. My dad likes to say if you hang out at a barber shop long enough, you're eventually going to get a haircut. Um,
Yeah,
so
it's true.
basically, my MO was, I was like, all right, I'm from Richmond. This is what I want to do. I was not like a super competitive student coming out of undergrad. I'd had a graduate program that I did pretty well in, and I was like, had decent test scores. I was like, I think that my best way forward is I'm going to do as much stuff as I possibly can at this institution, and
Mhm.
just whenever an opportunity comes up, I'll just be like the dude that's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Right.
So I started off and I was like, this is a COVID year. I'm going to be a scribe in the emergency department. And then
That's
they were
cool.
like, yeah, I would have loved to do that. Except they said, yeah, no, we can't do that. We're furloughing all of our scribe positions. I was like, all right, well, that sucks. And then, so I started looking for any research positions, and
Mhm.
a friend of a friend knew somebody who's working with somebody, like 6 degrees of separation, and I
Right.
basically became like an unpaid intern for this like developing research program that looked at like adolescent blood pressure, and
Gotcha.
it was an unpaid position, and I was making like dioramas and like curriculum based stuff for fourth graders to learn about blood pressure. And so I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna keep,
Interesting.
yeah, so I'm gonna stick with this. And like I was 22. Yeah, 22 at this time. This was 2020, in the middle of COVID or
Yep.
just after it. I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna keep doing this because it's what I want to do. And then on the side, I was tutoring ACT and SAT students to
Mhm.
like make enough money to pay rent in Richmond. And then I think 6 months into that gig, one of the lead cardiology researchers came in and was like, hey, we need somebody like ASAP. Like, do you have any availability? I was like, yep, I sure do. I've been
Yep.
waiting for this for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I started doing research part time. And then I also got a scribe position based off of that. And then I just went research full time. So
Awesome.
when you were mentioning your sister who was like talking about maybe going into medicine, like a lot of people say like, oh, a lot of connections, and there are. I mean, you definitely make. I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people eventually get into school. But I would also say if you find something or somewhere that you really want to be a part of, just I took any opportunity I could
Yeah.
to like increase my ties to that place, and so I'll forever be grateful for those opportunities. If somebody else is like, well, how do you get into it? You just start doing it,
Hmm.
emailing, calling, physically going to visit. That's kind of like if you were looking for advice, I don't know if that's what you were fishing for, but that was just kind of
Yeah.
my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And hearing other people's experiences is probably the greatest advice you could hear from anybody, right? Like, how did that person deal with certain circumstances that came up that are difficult? How did they overcome it? What were their paths? Did they reach out to A person or B person? Were you contacting more professors than research group members? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's all just all about how you complete that process. And I'm sure everybody can look at it objectively and be like, oh, there's only one way to do this. Obviously not. Like, everybody's different, and there's a lot of different ways to climb your way up that ladder per se. um
Hmm.
One other kind of question: scribe versus research. Can you kind of
Hmm.
explain the difference? I would believe that research is more like studies and publishing papers. Scribing is just
Hmm.
what taking all the information from those studies, or is it from like patients? Kind of how does that
Yeah.
differentiate, I guess?
Sorry, I was kind of throwing those terms around just like interchangeably.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I mean, besides just being like really interesting fields in and of themselves, they're basically like entry level positions that an undergrad student can take that
Mhm.
looks good on a medical school application while you're also learning a bunch of stuff. So what a scribe does is they'll go into clinic with a certain kind of doctor. It can be internal medicine, regular primary care physician, dermatology, really any specialty. And you are basically a fly on the wall um, when the doctor is talking with the patient and you're writing down the entire note for that encounter basically and summarizing
Mhm.
everything and doing all the prescription orders and all that good stuff so you learn really how a physician interacts with the patient.
Yeah.
And then on the research side, I was fortunate enough to be more patient facing because there were clinical trials, and so I was getting patients' consent to be enrolled in these studies. I was talking to the sponsors about how the studies were going, inputting data. But that's more like the innovative side of medicine that I don't think a lot of people get to see
Yeah.
slash know really exist. So I was really fortunate that I got to experience that because that was probably the biggest influence in me to continue working in medicine because the clinic can just become such a grind and it
I'm
becomes
sure.
very repetitive and a lot of people get burnt out in the clinic. Um, so to see another side of it was really important for me.
Yeah, man, I totally believe it. I mean, I saw my CPC today, or PCP, sorry, CPC,
Uh,
PCP. I
Same
saw
thing.
him today. Yeah, right. I saw him today, and I get 12 minutes with the guy, and he's expected to what? See 20 patients a day. You know what I
Oh
mean? Like,
yeah,
how can you formulate a bond with your doctor or your physician like that, if you're only seeing them 12 minutes a day? Like, everybody that's responding to your text via the portal, or an administrative assistant, or somebody that might not know you in the same capacity that the doctor does. I feel like that's a huge strain to put on those physicians in that point. I feel like that sucks for the patient, because they're not maybe getting the
yeah,
personable care that they might want. Anyway, I feel like the way they have it though is extremely effective for everything that's given. And I guess, like, I totally agree with you. That could get a monotonous, burnout. I can totally
oh,
see
yeah,
that. Could you imagine 20, 25 people diagnosing their medical conditions every day for 363 days, because you can only take 2 days off or whatever because you're short staffed? You know what I mean? Like, I can see that. So, like, I have an extreme interest in the clinical trial like side of stuff, the research stuff.
hmm,
I read a lot of crap. So I don't know. I need to research some more about VCU stuff. Maybe get in on some clinical
yeah.
trials for some stuff. I feel like that'd be fun. I wouldn't even care to get paid for it. I mean, that'd be great, but
Oh, dude, I'll have to send you a website, but there's so many trials at VCU going on right now, and almost like any field that you can possibly think of that are always
Really?
looking for participants. Oh yeah, I'll have to find the link after we finish up. But yeah, if you just look through it, it's super cool because they basically detail all the studies and what they're looking at.
Yeah, I love
But
that. Yeah.
yeah, but the burnout that you were talking about, I know that's such a hot topic. Is like now that I'm kind of in school, and now this is like something that has been brought up and talked about. Now they're teaching about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how quickly it can happen. And I think that like your point of how many patients that you see a day is a big part of it. But I also think that the problems that the physicians are facing are becoming so chronic. It's it's becoming
Sure. Yeah.
so hard to treat. It's not like someone's coming in with an acute problem and you fix it and you're like get that good feeling like, oh, I've cured somebody, I've fixed this patient. It's somebody that comes in like month to month, every 3 months, and it just like no, it's not getting better, getting worse. There's nothing you really can do for it besides prescribing a pill. It's like
Yeah.
and then that's like when you start having a patient population like that, and then you can't fix it as quickly as that you want to or as effectively as you want to. You start just to like question. You're like, what am I even doing? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not making a difference. And I think that's really where the burnout comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sounds devastating, man. I mean, that's really mentally tough to deal with every day. Yeah, I mean, I wish more people took their general health more seriously. Even
Hmm.
if not like huge physical exercise, just get up, walk around, stretch maybe once a day, go on a run once a week, go hiking once a month, ride a bike. There's so many things you can do to just kind of get outside, get active and not, live a sedentary lifestyle. I know that's a huge problem that we deal with and, obesity leads to a lot of other chronic illnesses, I'm sure. A
Hmm.
lot of those things are as a result of poor eating habits, you know, poor eating habits in general, like what we eat, when we eat it, what we drink, choose to consume, choose to sit on the couch and watch Netflix, type of deal instead of walking outside. I do think this is something I have talked about previously in the podcast, like my Sour Patch watermelons right here. If that ain't all sugar and fucking chemicals, you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
I can have these because it was my birthday. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not eating Sour Patch Kids 4 days a week and drinking freaking 12 soda pops a day. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you got to moderate.
100% you have to moderate. And it's just like you were saying about exercise and diet is just like so important because I mean, I wish I could pull up the statistic, but it's something like 65 to 70%. Don't quote me on this because I could be wrong, but of spending on healthcare as a result of chronic illnesses that are preventable, which is like pretty sad when you think about it. Because I mean, I think that there's a lot of factors at play. Um, I don't want to marginalize or minimize it, but I mean, like you said, if you can just maintain like a decent diet with a little moderation, not even like you don't have to do keto or carnivore diet or go
Yeah.
like vegetarian or vegan or something crazy, but it's like if you just exercise a little bit, like walk down the street regularly and then like moderate your soda intake or try to stay away from sugar and carb, like just small things. It would be amazing the effect on the populace that it would have.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I did look it up. The 2018 NIH.gov study is 75%.
Okay, so it was even higher than what I estimated to be, which is
Yep.
like it's crazy. And so I mean, when you look at I'm looking at or in cardiology research and the patient population is coming in and you're seeing 35 to 40-year olds having heart attacks or arrhythmias or congestive heart failure and at a rate that's much higher than an anomaly. You
Right.
just start to wonder like what is going on?
Right. Yeah, and I think it's tough on the consumer too because obviously we live in America. We have to deal with
Hmm.
capitalism, right? What are these large corporations doing? They're marketing all of these poor foods and they're also making them cheaper. Like it costs a lot
Yeah.
more to eat healthy than it does to eat like garbage. which is
Hmm.
unfortunate. And I think that puts prejudice against people that don't have, large budgets for spending. Again, I think there are ways around that. Obviously, I try to consume healthy foods most of the time. I'm not perfect, as are most people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it definitely preys on people that have less spending power, and they typically don't have as good of health insurance, so they can't afford
Hmm.
the premium procedure they need for X, Y, and Z. So I think people stuck in that cycle continue to stay in that cycle, unfortunately, and like for physicians that have to see these patients all the time, what can they do about it? Their insurance won't cover this and they can't afford it. What are you supposed to do? You know what I mean?
It
Like,
just gets so tough.
is there any way around that if it like is a critical thing to save their life? Other than that, like you probably couldn't, force them to spend the money, right? If they weren't
Yeah,
going
I mean, that's like you just touched on one of the things that is like such an existential question that we basically deal with every day, and we have so many classes about this, and basically, like the answer is I don't really know, which sucks.
to. Yep.
If I had the answer, I would be much more famous and much more renowned. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think we're in this really weird spot, at least in healthcare, where it's trying to operate like a business, but it's also trying to operate universally with accessibility. I think that line that they're trying to toe is not really that great. Um, and I don't really know what the solution is, but I know that you can't treat it like a business slash nonprofit and then also treat it as like a universal thing. I
Right.
don't think that I don't think that those two things mesh very well together, and clearly not because, like you said, I mean it's definitely one of those things that's a huge problem, and I don't know what the answer is to it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But that's like, yeah, that's the thing. Like you said, like you'd be a very rich man if you had the solution to that problem.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that kind of exacerbates it is like a lot of fake shit is thrown into the heap, and sometimes, if you're not doing your own research and, looking at independent studies with, control, you might be looking at something that's fucking two subjects and both of them got the same disease or something like that and they could both get cured from the same thing. You can't trust that. You got to trust an independent control trial from a freaking Johns Hopkins or UVA or somewhere where these people have the access of money and resources to like perform something like that. So like think
Yeah.
about all these people that are uninformed with food choices. Not even the fact that it's marketed towards them. Like they don't know what to buy. Um
Yeah,
so like
that's another huge issue, like the education standpoint. Yeah. Actually, I hope that that's getting better. Is as much as
yeah.
I disdain, but not disdain, but how much I don't really particularly like social media per se. I do
Mhm.
really like the avenue it gives you for access to information. Not saying all that information is good, definitely
Agreed.
not. But compared to where we were 30 years ago, I think the level of baseline knowledge when it comes to like just for example, what foods are good for you and what foods are not good for you has greatly improved. Not saying that it's where it should be, but I mean, I think at a baseline level it's improved. And I think that it's increasing. So
Yeah.
hopefully that'll be a positive of everybody's phone being in their
Right.
pocket at all times.
Although a negative, I was talking to the nurse practitioner today when she came into my height, weight, checked my temperature and blood pressure or whatever, and we were chatting about the flu shot. And I just came back from this golf trip, and I have mild asthma. And when the seasons change, when I go from hot weather to cold weather, that triggers that, and I'm feeling a little bit stuffed up. So I told him, I was like, look, I'll come in next week. My office is literally across the street and I can get my flu shot and I'll just go back. I said, I just, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. I don't want to take that risk and be sick for 2 weeks. And she's like, oh, yo, you're totally fine. She's like, you can walk in, go to the front desk, they'll get you hooked up. She's like, she's like, yeah, I had a guy come in yesterday and he said he got all the COVID boosters, but then he wouldn't get the flu shot when I asked him. And it was like a whole thing. He started explaining all this shit to me. I'm like, I don't, she was like, I'm fed up with it. I don't feel like dealing with that. And I'm like, I hear you. I was like, I feel bad. Like I try to be super, super, nice and respectable to these people I know that take their shit seriously. Why should I also not. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's a
Yeah.
certain level to that. I feel like not everybody treats their doctors or dentists, all these people that they rely on for healthcare, man. Come on. I don't know. I
Yeah.
think it's
And I think
ridiculous.
it's just, I don't really have any experience like necessarily, or I don't have the knowledge to really say like, oh, as a medical professional, I think that you should do this, or that. But what I have seen and like the skill that I'm working on developing is that like if someone comes in and they're convinced that what you're doing to them is not going to benefit them, I don't think that it's in anybody's interest to like puff out your chest and be like, well, listen here, I'm the doctor and I know what's best for you. Cause like,
Right.
even if you do, you've completely destroyed that patient's trust in a system regardless. So down the road, is that a procedure that'll save their life, or they're like, I don't need it? Or is it something as simple as like a vaccine? I just think that
Right.
like our job, as far as I'm concerned, is to like give the information that you believe is most helpful, like encourage slightly, and then leave it up to the patient because that's all you really can do. And if you
Yeah.
want to instill like trust and create a relationship, you definitely don't want to be like the arrogant person who's like, oh, you're being such an idiot because of X, Y, and Z, and I know better than you because I went to this medical school and like
Right.
you're just a blah blah blah. So there's a lot of that going on, and I think that that doesn't really do much good if you're demonizing people.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I try to be as level-headed as possible. I went in there, I was like, "Look, I just want you to tell me what you think um I should do, and
Hmm.
I'll debate you on it. I want to hear what you have to say, but overall, I want to make that decision. But I definitely need to know what you think is best. And so far, it's been everything that he says. I haven't challenged him on anything because obviously, I trust that kind of stuff more from somebody that's studied that. We've
Hmm.
had good conversation because I don't know, I tested him out a little bit, not to say that like to make it sound weird or whatever. I kind of talked to him about my creatine usage and my supplement usage, that, how I'm
Hmm.
exercising, like kind of what his thoughts were on that kind of stuff. And I want blood tests once a year. And he was super cool about it and like, very knowledgeable on all that kind of stuff too. So I'm like, okay, I trust this person because I know he takes his own health very seriously. I know
Yeah.
he'll be he'll be awesome for me. So like that really it made me excited to have him as like he's a PA, but I don't know, man. I trust him because of that. He passed the
Yeah.
sniff test, even though I don't even have like that big of a sniffer, I guess, because I don't know that much. I don't know. It was that respect level thing. I don't know. I appreciated that.
But like that's the whole point, right? So like you have found a healthcare provider that you A feel comfortable with, B trust, and C probably will follow up with more regularly, whether you think you have a problem or you don't have a problem, more because of that interaction. And that is the best thing that can happen in healthcare because the worst thing that can happen in healthcare is the opposite of what you experience, which is someone comes in and they may or may not have a serious issue going on, and then they come out of that with a bad taste in their mouth. Like, I'm never going to the doctor again. Be damned what all this is. And then to a point where it's like, however many months, weeks, days later, it's like they get to the hospital and they're like, what is this? What have you been doing? And it could be a result of that. So I think that that's
Right.
super important, and I'm glad that you had that such a positive experience. I hope to when I become a physician that that's how my patients view me.
Oh man, I'm sure they will, but I'm also sure there's going to be a couple bad eggs in the batch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
that's the way it is with everything. So I'm sure you're gonna have a tough time with a few patients for sure. But man, all of the conversations we've had, you've been incredibly like respectful and knowledgeable about all of the questions that I've had. So I can't imagine that anybody would have a negative experience, with you when it comes to that. But so I guess that's kind of translates well into my follow up question. What does that look like for you in 8 years? Kind of once you're graduated, are you gonna want to set up your own practice? Or are you gonna want to kind of follow somebody into a specific field? I know obviously that's a long way away still.
Hmm.
Do you have to like kind of, for lack of a better term, like pigeonhole yourself into one market, or kind of can you get general knowledge and then choose towards the end?
On top. So depends on what you want to do, which I know is
Mhm.
not a great answer, but I think that like it's just a just to describe the process, I think will give people a better idea of like how not scary, but like how scary it is to actually pick something.
Sure.
So your first 2 years of medical school, or at least at VCU, you're in the classroom doing your preclinical stuff. So you're learning all the knowledge basically that textbooks can basically give you. That's the fundamental like foundation of your learning.
Right.
And so your third year, you basically spend it all in clinic, doing work, writing notes, going to different specialties. And that's like really where you start to learn how to become a physician.
Hmm.
And then I'm not sure when it is, but really your third year is where you start to pick, okay, this is kind of what I'm interested in. I'm more interested in surgery. I'm more interested in clinic work. I'm more interested in this specialty. And so you obviously gravitate towards that. And then you start like working on all these applications for your residency. So after you
Hmm.
graduate your fourth year, you go into residency. You apply to, I don't even know how many it is. It's an absurd amount. You do these
Sure.
crazy interviews and you're like prioritizing people and then you rank them and it goes into a system and like matching residency is its own bag of worms. But basically, like you can pick something pretty general and then specialize, or you can go right into specialized stuff. But usually it's 4 to 5 year residency that's like option of like a fellowship,
Hmm.
and it can be longer if you're doing surgery. And then you finally can become an attending, which is like who would you would like the big boss doctor, I guess, not the resident.
Right.
Um, so you're really kind of deciding your third year. And a lot of people have a pretty specific idea of what they want to do now. I do not
Sure.
personally. Um, I'm sure that I will once I start doing my clinical rotations.
Hmm.
But off the top of my head, maybe something in surgery interests me. I was talking a lot about cardiology.
Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes very stressful because like you have this big culmination in your fourth year called match day, and you have no idea where you're going. You have no idea what job you got, and they basically like hand you this manila envelope, and then like in it you're like, oh, you're gonna be blah 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 in Cleveland,
Bro, I
which
couldn't
is
deal with
insane.
that. I couldn't deal
Yeah,
with that. My anxiety would be through the fucking roof, man.
yeah, it's
Oh,
crazy, and
it's kind of
and
exciting
like
though.
it's super exciting. A lot of people have problems with it because the way that they do it is like you basically rank your top choices, and then based on an algorithm, it basically assigns you to a place that you've gotten an offer from.
Hmm.
And the scary part is that you're not guaranteed to match.
Right.
So like the Monday before your match day, you could technically have to scramble with like you have to reapply to these residencies late term. But that's really stressful. Yeah, medicine is just actually a roller coaster of being stressed out at different points in time in your life. That's all it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as a what is it, a layperson, a common citizen, I'm happy to hear that you guys really have a passion and an affinity for it. Honestly, I mean, the fact that it's such a long term of schooling makes me confident in a lot of the healthcare professionals that we have in our
Hmm.
hospitals, in our doctors' offices. So, like, this is good for people out there to hear, how passionate, young people going into medicine are to get there and really make an impact and a difference. And like, I don't know, man, it seems like you had a positive experience, and hopefully that'll translate into this the next few school years for you. And then I'm sure once you have a practice or decide what you want to do, man, that's so exciting. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to your point, it's like, I don't know. I mean, there are much smarter people than I am, way smarter, and like genius level who can probably like walk through medical school and be like, that was easy. But the vast majority of people are absolutely grinding. And I think
Yeah.
that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Bad for us who are doing it because at some point you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? Good
Right.
for everybody else who's like, I'm glad that they're getting schooled this much. But yeah, rest assured, the people that actually come out the other end definitely want to do this. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And is there okay, so what's another good follow-up question, I guess, like, is there something you guys study 15 years after you get your practicing license, or I forget what you coined that term or what that term was. I know for like, what is it for law school, you might have to take the bar every 8 years or something like that. Is there specific tests that you have to re-up? Like, what does the knowledge base say for somebody, if I have a physician that's 75 years old, is he going to inherently know more because he has treated 10 times the amount of patients, or somebody that's 45 and was recently, schooled in much higher technology, incorporated medicine, I guess, if you can understand.
Yeah, no, I got you. So basically, I'm pretty sure it's different from state to state, but
Okay, I
I
got you.
know the Virginia Board of Medicine because I was constantly on every physician's ass to like get them to renew their license. You have to renew your license every 2 years, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
every two
Okay.
years. And you have to, in order to renew your license, you have to complete 60 hours of what they call continuing medical education.
Oh, wow, man.
I don't really
Jeez.
know how that's offered. It's usually through the institution, and I would think that like half of it's pretty like base knowledge. So drugs, the new prescriptions, like basic procedures, biological foundations of science, and then
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure the other half is like in your specialty. Now, I'm not really sure if that's what it is. Um, I know that if you are a specialized physician, there's a different process that you have to do
Sure. Hmm.
through a different board. I'm not sure. I think that might be every 8 to 10 years. I'm not sure about that though.
Gotcha.
I'm sure that'll be a joy when I get down the road. But I remember my grandfather like
Yeah.
had to renew his like license in Georgia, and he had to do boards again. And he would always complain because like he's like, I don't remember how to do any of this. I'm like, wow, that's just so reassuring, Grandpa. um, but yeah, so there's definitely a process where they like it's always the next thing. Like you always have to keep
Mhm.
studying for stuff. So the base level of knowledge never really leaves you. I will say that like what I'm learning right now as a first year medical student, like the detail and depth that I have now is probably more than I'll ever have in my career at this
Sure.
point, just because like there's so much you forget. But
Hmm.
in terms of like the big things, yeah, they make sure that everybody knows that. Or that's how
Right.
else you get
Yeah.
sued.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, damn, dude, that's another thing. We were talking earlier about burnout and healthcare professionals. Can you, the fucking liability that y'all
So
have,
bad.
especially like surgeons, you know? Jeez. Now back to your
Yeah.
point about, getting into something really specialized. I had Tommy John surgery when I was 18, and
Hmm.
I went out to see the orthopedic surgeon for the Cincinnati Reds, which was pretty cool. My parents got it hooked up, and
That's
pretty
super cool.
sure when I got there, they told me he does 6 a day. Took him 28 minutes. I have a CD of the surgery, and I'm like,
Yeah, I gotta
once
see
you get,
that.
oh, absolutely. I'll show you sometime. I don't know exactly where the disc is, but I have a couple videos on my cell phone, in my Google Photos, like 20-second video clips of like me in the waiting room or in the patient room afterwards watching it on the television. um, but yeah, my point being, like, once you get to that level, man, homie could probably do it in his sleep. I mean, he's performing
Oh
6 a
yeah.
day, so like, if that's all he's doing, I mean, let him do his thing. But when it
There's
comes,
some positions that are like, yeah, when they get super specialized like that, there's a guy I think down in Miami. I don't remember who was telling me about this, but um, basically uses a robot called the Da Vinci machine to
oh yeah,
do these surgeries, and it's like his setup is almost like a video game where he has two operating rooms going at the same time, and like literally he'll finish up surgery and just walk across the hall and start another one.
and
He
put on the
does like
gloves
something
or
like
whatever. Yeah.
no, he doesn't even have to put on the gloves because the robot's doing the surgery.
Ah, I
So
see.
while he's doing one, like the OR scrub team is getting the other room prepped, and he literally just walks it like back and forth all day and does something like 25 procedures a day, which is crazy. I
Jeez.
mean, crazy. I mean, these guys are so good.
That is wild. Can you imagine how early that man will retire though? She's doing
I mean,
25.
yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine being that good at something ever in my life. Like, think about like what you're most good at in life and then be like, I'll never be as good at this one thing than they are at that thing.
Absolutely. But that, that's what that's the joy in like life in general and
Hmm.
external stimuli, right? Like all these athletes, that's why we love watching football and baseball and soccer
True.
and all these sports because we watch pinnacle athletes who train every single day and are in those ice baths and saunas and
Hmm.
2 runs, yoga and weightlifting every single day. You know what I mean? That's pinnacle, like human physical strength, body attributes, all of that. And we get to watch them play the sport that their body is genetically built for. I mean,
Yeah.
shit, man. You see these basketball players. Look at them stand. You can't tell me that their shoulders aren't twice as broad as the regular person. Their
Yeah.
wingspan isn't an extra 2 feet. Like they are built for the game of basketball. Victor Wembanyama, bro. Just look at the guy. You know what I
Yeah. I
mean? It's
mean,
so cool. It really is.
you're so right. Like when you like compare it like that, where someone has been grinding, just like practicing their craft for so long, and you get the pleasure of watching it, it is awe-inspiring, especially like in sports where, I mean, that's so easy to understand, like how hard it is to do something. Where
Right.
like you see Wemby like go through the legs, throw an alley oop, or like just jam it. You're like, oh my God, that was amazing. Um, and you're just like in awe of these like super incredible people. And then like you said, like your physician did a Tommy John's repair in like 28 minutes. And you're like, how does he do this? It's like the same thing, but just a different avenue.
Right. Absolutely. And it's as important to you as you make it, as you feel, as you're emotionally
Hmm.
attached to it, like I might get the same gratification when I complete my first building by myself as you do when you do your first surgery. It's like
I'm
it's
sure.
like you know what I mean? It's like different levels. But like yeah, man, it's always awesome to have something to look at like that, especially with, the things you're passionate about. Like for me, even with this podcast, I watch a couple podcasters and I try to edit it and start to like, figure out where I need to be more professional by listening to other podcasts, taking in advice, whatever. I don't know, stuff like that. It's fun to have those things to almost hold on a pedestal, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, no, but like also just want to sidebar, insanely
Yeah.
impressive what you've like been able to build. Like it does feel extremely professional. And I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts and they're like, I love the way that it's just like their name and then just like everything about them. I find that so entertaining. Like almost more entertaining than like somebody who's like specifically famous for one thing. Because like at the end of the day, when you peel it back, like they're no more as interesting as another person just on based on the fact that they're famous.
Right.
And like
100%.
you're such a good interviewer, and it's just been like it's been so fun to listen to this. So sorry, that's my fangirl sidebar.
No, I really appreciate it, man. That brings me pleasure that people are actually enjoying it, and like that's my whole goal, man. The art of conversation has been lost
Hmm.
the last 10 years, and obviously podcasts have been a good way to kind of get that back. But without there's Rogan, I think that's Theo Vaughn, the Barstool Caller Daddy do long form stuff, but like I don't know, man. I think it's just so important to talk on a just human to human interaction level. That's why I want to do a studio in person. That's why I want to have you
Hmm.
and everybody else just come sit down, have a beer, we'll just
Yeah,
hang
that'd
out
be
and
great.
just talk. You know what I mean? Like that's the
Hmm.
whole point. Like I'm super interested in, what you're doing for school and like, what you're passionate about because it's important to you. It's so interesting to me. Does that make any sense? Like I'm just so interested in that because you're I don't know. I don't know,
I
passionate about it. Yeah.
I think that's a telltale sign of somebody who's like truly interested in a lot of different things is like just the desire for conversation is so important. I also think that like you were saying, which is such a good point, that the art of conversation has been so lost. And I think that that's why people are gravitating towards these long form podcasts because like not everyone can have like an uninterrupted conversation for so long. And I think it's honestly
Right.
refreshing to hear like just a conversation about something as like benign or as boring as some people might think about like the medical field. And it's not like inherently political or like someone's taking a side, or it's just truly like insightful. And I think that
Yep.
that's what a lot of people want to hear. You can go
Yeah.
ahead and hear inflammatory stuff if you turn on the news if you want, but I think that this is where like the rubber meets the road in terms of like normal people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a normal conversation. Like these are things that like homies are talking about at the bar, when they're having a beer on a Wednesday night
Yeah,
or
exactly.
whatever. And like that's like there's nobody doing that anymore. Not to say nobody. There's plenty of people still out, consuming it at all these places, but
Hmm.
like the majority of our life is consumed by our phone screen right here, this mini computer that we have in our hands, that we have access to all the information as well as none of the information. I feel like without conversation, it's just text blobs. You don't have to. I don't have to stand here and say, you suck to your face, right? Like it's behind the screen. I can tweet some shit that might make you look bad or embarrassing to your place of work or to your significant other, your friends and family, whatever, to make you look bad. Like it's totally different in the way that kind of we interact with each other. And I don't really love it, man. I think it's important for us to talk to each other on a physical and emotional level, if that makes any sense. It's important for us to share what we enjoy and those things with fellow human beings. So
I mean, exactly like that. That was exactly the vibe I got from you because I remember the first time I met you, I was like, I turned to Carmen, I was like, he is so easy to talk to. Like, I remember thinking that when I was like going out. I don't really remember the first time we met, but I remember leaving wherever it was, being like, wow, Tyler is so like genuinely interested in what other people are doing. And that I feel like is like such a rare thing. Because you have like tertiary conversations at like a party or like when you're out and you're like, what have you been doing? Like, what do
right.
you do for work? Where'd you go to school? And it's like very rarely do you come across someone where you're like you actually want to keep talking to. Damn, that guy was really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that was an extension of my college experience because like a lot of it is extremely surface level, especially when you're navigating that area as an 18 or 19-year-old and you're going to parties and this and
Hmm.
that. You're trying to find your place in the social world and your
Be
social tribe.
cool.
Right, exactly. Like, a lot of it was surface level, but I found more and more like when I develop bonds and relationships with my friends and the people, close around me, it's so interesting to see what other people like, man. Like people just amaze me, and I'm just so
Hmm.
interested like why people do what they do. An interesting conversation that my buddy Hunter and I had in the car on the way down to this golf trip, and I was like, dude, do you ever think about how many people you pass when you're taking a 5-hour ride like this down I-95? Do you ever think about what their plans are for the day, how many people you've passed, how many people are going to die in the next year, how many people are going to have a baby, like all of these independent, variables and things that are happening around us. Like I was like, I bet we passed 250,000 people on that car ride. You know what I mean?
Isn't that
Like,
wild to think about?
yeah. Yeah.
Where like everybody's having such a vastly different experience than you are, but like at the same time, they're not having a super different experience, you know?
Yep. Yep.
I think that's
Oh,
so cool to think about. And
100%.
for someone like you, I bet it drives you crazy because you're like, damn, I wish I could know what everybody's doing today or has been doing.
Absolutely, man. I would love to know that. The only thing that kind of sucks and I would find weird about that, I would, yeah, it's hard because like the whole First Amendment, I'm big on. Like people should, be able to say what they want to say regardless of whatever. But if somebody's is like, okay, cite your source and you don't have anything, then yeah, you have nothing to stand, you don't have a leg to stand on. I forget where I was going with that. Oh, yeah. Um, so like I don't know if I necessarily would want to know everything everybody was thinking because that would be a little invasive too much for me, but you know what I mean? Like as
Yeah.
far as like, this person I pass at 3:02 p.m., on I-95 down near Fayetteville, I think is where we passed. They're driving to Walmart to pick up a gallon of milk because they don't have milk for their cereal, the next morning or something, just weird little shit like that. Like that's what I
And
think
you
about.
find that interesting.
Yeah.
I
It's
do
like, I don't
too.
know,
I
man.
think it's so cool.
Everybody works so different, and it's partly, I think it's a few things. I think it's partly perception. How have you been trained to perceive the world in front of you? Like how do you react? What's your reactionary movements and dialogue and towards a certain situation. Two, your influences. How majorly your parents' influences were when you were growing up. Did you have any siblings? How were your extended family? How did they all treat you? How were you treated in elementary, middle, and high school? Like, did you have relationships with a lot of friends? A, B, and C, right? There's so many independent variables when it comes to growing up, you know, to see how you're really affected into adulthood. And then three, I think genetics is a huge factor. I think that's been proven to be true. Um, I think a lot of genetic diseases or hereditary things have come through the human genome. So I don't know.
You
That's
pretty
kind of
much
my
nailed. You pretty much nailed them. If you wanted,
really.
if you wanted a perspective from like a medical perspective, yeah, like environmental and genetics is basically what you just summarized there. Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the biggest things is how like you grew up, and I think that that's super interesting to me now that I'm thinking about that because like I always I have the same thought that you have on the road as I do in the airport. Like when I
Yeah.
see people in the airport and like you're kind of sitting in the terminal and you're like looking around and people watching, like dang, like I wonder what it was like growing up in like that guy's household. I wonder
Yeah.
what like his story is to like bring him to this point in time. And I think that what you said about like were they like bullied as a kid, like how they grew up, where they go to medical meds, not medical school, middle school. Um, what are their genetic predispositions? Like that's constantly what I'm thinking about. So to know that like that's also like where you kind of come in is pretty cool.
Yeah, man. I like to think I'm a regular Joe just thinking about that stuff. But then again, I feel like a lot of people aren't maybe up to snuff in terms of like educationary standards. I know we talked about, I think a few weeks ago on the podcast, the current like reading level of like the United States of Americans or Americans living in the United States. It's not very high. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's 20% of adults are functioning illiterate, functionally illiterate. So they can do everything normal, but they cannot read on any basic level whatsoever. Um, so yeah, like those people can't be thinking about what everybody else is doing. I'm sure they're focusing enough on what they got going on. But one other thing I did want to kind of say, and then we can kind of work our way towards wrapping up here because I know
Mm-hmm.
I've taken up a ton of your time. Joe
All
Rogan
good.
said something about this, and he's like I have a theory, which everybody out there you can use your own opinions and kind of judgment. It's kind of along a similar vein of what we've been talking about. But he's like, my theory is that everybody is pretty much exactly the same um, when they're born in terms of like mentally. It's just their environment directly shapes how they're going to turn out later in life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because of all those external factors, whether it be the things like I was saying earlier, your parents, the environment you live in. You're going to have a vastly different life if you grow up in freaking South Africa than if you do in Nebraska, right? Like those are two extremely different places. And
Yeah.
you get hit by your direct environment being your nature, food available, your economic status, and then your indirect stuff like the love that you're given as a child, your emotional needs, your physical needs are being met, stuff like that. And then his theory is basically that everybody's the same until they get developed, basically. And not that I necessarily think that is inherently true, but I think there's a lot of truth to it because of how massively influenced we are at that scale.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I don't know the clip that you're talking about, but I feel like he was probably talking about twin studies. And I think like there's a huge observational twin study done where basically that they were aggregating all these identical twins who have pretty much the same genome, not
Hmm.
identical, but like pretty similar. The most similar that you can get between study participants.
Sure.
And they were looking at adopted twins who were separated at birth and basically grew up in these like two different areas that you were talking about. And like completely different people, like across the board, mostly different. And one of the conclusions or one of the discussion points that they had in the study was basically saying exactly what you were saying is that it turns out that most of our development, even when we're talking about illness, now genetic predispositions, obviously, those are exacerbated by environmental factors, whether it be stress that you experience at a young age, or like toxins, or like how you're treated or how you're raised. That all has an impact when you start to develop.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I disagree with that. I feel like on the whole, that's pretty substantiated.
Yeah, I think sometimes he gets a little philosophical for me, in terms of like actual traditional
Yeah,
science, but like,
a
of
little
course,
bit.
like that's his job though. Like, come on, like for everybody out there that gets upset for that kind of stuff, I'm not sure. Like, you have your own opinions. If that upsets you, whatever, that's cool. But like, I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's where they lose it. I think that not all of those are real ideas. I think a large majority of them are not, and it's all hypothetical situations. And I think he kind of poses stuff like that at a well timed for guests that have a substantial answer to say about that. It wasn't just freaking Mike Tyson that he had on is talking about the consciousness of life, and how we perceive who we are and how we came to be. No, he's talking to a medical doctor or a heavy researcher in that subject. You know
Uh-huh.
what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
I don't a lot of it gets taken out of context.
Well, I like when you have like these ideas and then you kind of like think them out into the ether, and then you're just like waiting for somebody to like either challenge you or substantiate it, because it's like, I don't know how to deal with these thoughts. Like maybe I'll just throw it out there, and somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about will be like, yeah, you're right, or no, you're a complete idiot.
Yeah. That's the great thing about the podcast, man, or this
Mm-hmm.
podcast specifically. Like all of the people that I've had on so far, it's been a plethora of like different people from different places and different experiences. So like it's super cool like asking similar minded questions, although it might pertain to like very different subject matter. Like how do you react to this? How did you choose a career path in the medical field? Whereas somebody else I asked about it 2 months ago was a vastly different a path, but like your thought
Mm-hmm.
processes were similar. Like, it's something that you very much enjoyed and kind of fell into with the people around you, type of deal. So like, I don't know. It's so interesting hearing other people's stories about, things they're passionate about again. Um, oh, what was I going to say? Oh, one more question for you and then I'll let you go. You can enjoy the rest of your night. When you said study point in the research papers, is that like something that is discussed or disagreed upon by different authors of the article? How does that work? Is it a contention point in between, like something that's not necessarily substantiated?
Well, the only reason I said that is because right now I'm I'm studying for like a certain exam where we're talking about causation and correlation,
Hmm.
and basically like the name of the game when you're writing a paper is to say X causes Y because of this. Um, you can never truly, there's been very few cases, if ever, like you can, without a shadow of doubt, claim, oh, this is a causal relationship.
Right.
And that's like, so that was always so aggravating to me until I like really studied it. And it's like, oh, well, you didn't consider this factor, or you didn't use enough like randomization. So when they say like study points or like study discussion, it's like the researchers have come to this conclusion based on the study parameters that they sent, and this is like a logical way of thinking where, oh, we saw a higher prevalence rate of this, and it's like, well, we think it's because of this because we also saw it at higher rates. So they're caught like making an association, and a lot of research goes back and forth because it's like, oh, one researcher has developed a theory and then it's rebutted by another, and
Sure.
so on and so forth. So when I say study points, I was I was trying to be like ambiguous on purpose, I guess.
Oh no, absolutely. I was kind of interested in that because of kind of how you explained it. Like I'm extremely interested in how that independent stuff gets sifted almost. Because
Yeah.
like I don't know, there's got to be so many just things out of left field that's like, oh, have you considered that? And you're like, oh my god, that never would have crossed my mind type of deal.
Even in like certain papers, you just like, it's so personal now where you like look at a paper and you're like, oh, well, this is funded by this company. And so obviously this is going to be the result. Or you look at a paper and be like, what are they talking about? Like, this doesn't even make any sense. And you just like disregard it on its face. And I think that
Mhm.
That's kind of a result of what we were talking about earlier, where we were talking about the guy that comes into the medical office and he's like, "Well, I've been doing my research, and I I think all the power to them if you're doing your independent research, because at the end of the day, like even the most outed and renowned papers of history that have like set precedent, like there's always not always, but there's usually like a glaring problem with them that was overlooked for certain reasons, and whether or
Sure.
not that you find that out has an impact on the results of the study. So, like our job as physicians, really, um, is to basically interpret that and consolidate it into bite-sized information that we're able to disseminate to the public.
Yeah.
But then again, like we're also human, so we have our opinions and which studies that we look at or we see. And so I just, I'm also like you, just super interested in finding true validity things. And I think that has become easier and harder at the same time. Because I know we were talking about like social media, and it's like, oh, well, more information's out there. That's a consequence of more information. Is not everything is like reliable as it seems. And I think that people are usually smarter than we give them credit for and can make general conclusions on their own, if we just
Right.
provide them with the information. But
Right.
yeah,
But
that's a
we
tough
don't.
one. Yeah.
We don't. That's the problem. I kind of wanted to piggyback off what you said about the social media providing too much information. I think it's
Mhm.
important for these independent journalists to be on there doing their own independent research, publishing
Oh
papers,
yeah.
and putting out this information. This is something we've never seen before from major news outlets. It's truly independent information getting straight into the public's hands. With that being said, there's also still a lot of narrative to control there by large marketing agencies, people with deep pockets. So I can't
Oh,
imagine how tough it is in your industry, man.
but I mean, like to your point, I love it. Like I think that dissenting opinions, whether or not like you look at something and be like, oh, this is bullshit, or you look at something and be like, wow, I've never thought about it like this. The more of that that there is genuinely a good thing.
Yes.
And I know that some people find that like, oh, but what if it's wrong? And like this like causes a huge controversy, and now people won't do like I think that on its whole, it'll be fine. And I think that with everything, the more options and the more opinions and the more stuff that you look at is genuinely a good thing. And whether or not that needs to be controlled is up for a debate that's probably beyond my area
Sure.
of expertise. But I personally want to be able to see everything and anything that people think and form my own opinions on it. And whether or not
I,
somebody else thinks that's wrong or right is kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme of things.
yeah, I agree. I mean, not to be selfish, but it's all about you, man. Like, it's all about your perspective, how you're going to wake up and tackle the day. Like, you know,
Yeah,
if you decide,
exactly. Like
yeah,
if I believe a certain thing, and as long as it doesn't impact somebody else, why does it make other people frustrated that I think a certain way?
I can actually
Like,
answer that question, I think, to some degree. So what is it? Oh, it's like what is it? Maslow's rule of tribes or something like that, or the law of tribes. It's basically this study that was performed, and it's like different groupings of levels of people that you feel like you need to belong to, or is your closest like social circle. I think it's the law of sevens or something like that. Don't quote me on this. This is
this
very
hierarchy of needs.
maybe the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Is that what I'm thinking of? I
Mm,
think I'm combining 2 different things.
yeah.
Anyway, it's basically the tribal status of humans. Like, we wanna belong to an
Uh-huh.
ideology or a group or a subject or a sports team or whatever. We like to belong to with other people. We like to belong to a tribe.
Hmm.
We've seen that for what? Hundreds of thousands of years, all the way back to hunter, early, what is it, Homo erectus and hunter gatherers. Like, these motherfuckers were crawling around, foraging mushrooms and berries and, hunting deer, right? But they were all part of 72 person tribes or whatever it was that was that maximum allowance of people that could travel in quick enough groups not to get picked off by, large land animals at the time, or, whatever they were dealing with, starvation, disease, and could still meet the needs of everybody in the group. So I think, what is it? Coincidentally, that transcended to kind of what we do today. We like to belong to, like, I'm Xbox, you're
Yeah.
PlayStation guy. Like, I'm
It's a
red, you're
big
blue.
debate. That's
For us, bro, back then, oh my god, that was the biggest debate ever, and that still carries
oh my God. Yeah.
carries a lot with me. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, people like to belong to different subject matter.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I think that's a really good way of articulating it because I don't know, like, I think that that has to be part of the answer. I just, going back to our whole point of like, basically let people do what they want to do insofar as it doesn't affect your life, I guess.
Right.
And in no particular context, but I think
Right.
that's just a
Absolutely.
genuinely good way to think, and I think that you'll have more positive experiences and learn a lot more that way. I'm
Yep.
sure that I haven't listened to every one of your podcasts, but I'm sure that someone along the line has said something that like you're like, maybe not, maybe that's not entirely true, but like you listen to them, and you're like, that makes sense. They form their opinion because you're inquisitive and you ask them questions, and then you come out of that and be like, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's not about whether it's right or wrong, it's how they thought about the process, and it's like, that's what interests me. It's like, how did you arrive at this conclusion? Whether it's right or wrong,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter, that's besides the point. It's like, what made you think that? How does your brain work? Why do you think A to C when I think A to B and then B to C? You know what I mean? Like, we could be at two different inflection points, and not understanding what somebody else is actually trying to get across too. That's another huge thing. I feel like sometimes people can't articulate exactly what they want to tell another person.
yeah, no, I think that's like a really good synthesis of what you were saying earlier about like passing cars, and you were talking about like how they were brought up and like how they were raised in environmental factors. Because I think that ultimately that comes down to your want of how did you arrive at this conclusion or point in time, or like why are you here right now, basically, not in an existential way, but like
Sure.
physically. And I think that is so cool, and I think that's such a great perspective to have. I think that makes you such an interesting person, especially as a podcaster.
No, I appreciate that, man. What better way to end it right there after that, man? Hey, it's been what, probably almost an hour and 40 minutes. So this has been on the longer side. But honestly,
I
dude,
love it.
once we got to like an hour 20, I felt like we were rolling, we were both comfortable. Might as well keep it going, man. I love
Oh,
it.
we were. I mean, I kind of like just time travel a little bit.
Yeah, that's
It's
what
just
I'm saying.
rolled right on through.
Yeah, I love it. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your night to do this and to put your story out there for all these prospective viewers I've got, in the chamber, the tens of thousands of millions of people that are listening to this podcast. No, but all 20 of you I know out there, my 26 followers on Spotify. I appreciate everybody on there. Thanks for keeping up with me. This is going to be one, hopefully I'll get into early year of 2025. I'm still a few weeks out on some of the guest ones I'll be releasing, but we're definitely have to do it again. Hopefully next time it'd be in person. I would love to do that.
Oh, dude, I'd
So
love that.
yeah, man, it was a pleasure having you on here.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
Of course, man. All right, for everybody out there, you can find us on all social medias. We're at Slanted Attic. Should be domain of slantedattic.com. That'll be coming soon, or the Slanted Attic Experience on YouTube and Facebook. All right, buddy. Thanks for tuning in with us today, and we'll see you on the next one.